Hello, dear. It's Helen. They say your life flashes before your eyes when you're about to die, but no one talks about what flashes after you survive. For me, it was my son's voice. "Tell me if she doesn't make it," he said, not in a whisper, not in fear, but with a calm, surgical coldness, like he was asking about the weather, like he was placing an order, and he said it when he thought I couldn't hear. But I did. I heard every word, and that was the moment I knew, whatever future he'd been planning, it didn't include me. Not alive, anyway. Part 1. The Hook. It was raining that night. Texas rain, the kind that sheets sideways and makes the road vanish beneath you. I'd been at the pharmacy, picking up blood pressure pills and a little chocolate treat I wasn't supposed to have, something small, something sweet. I don't remember the truck that hit me, just the sudden scream of tires, the shattering glass, the taste of iron in my mouth. Then silence. Not death. Not yet. But that strange, sterile stillness that lives in hospital rooms and emergency calls. I was in and out. White lights, shouting voices. Someone said my name. Someone else said, "Head trauma, GCS 11. I didn't know what it meant, but it didn't sound good. And then a man's voice, low, sharp, my son's voice. "Keep me posted," he said, like he was managing a meeting. "And tell me immediately if she doesn't make it. I have plans." Plans. I didn't know what he meant. I didn't want to know, not yet. But I felt something cold inside me shift. Not just fear, not just pain, betrayal. That word tasted worse than blood. Because that voice, it belonged to my boy, the baby I had rocked through croupy nights, the teenager I had cheered for at football games, the man I had watched grow into something rich, successful, and increasingly distant. David, my only child. When I woke up 2 days later, I was in ICU, hooked to machines I couldn't name, tubes, wires, tape pulling at my skin. A nurse smiled down at me. "Welcome back, sweetheart." My throat burned when I tried to speak. "My son," I rasped. "Was he here?" Her face softened. "He came in the night of your accident, stayed a few hours. He said he had to catch a flight." "Did he—" My voice caught. "Did he leave a message?" She shook her head gently. "No, ma'am. But he said he'd check in." And just like that, I was alone again. Not just in the room, in the world. The recovery was slow. My body felt like broken glass glued together wrong. Everything hurt, especially the quiet. The only visitors were hospital staff, and sometimes Margaret from down the street, bless her heart, bringing ginger tea and gossip. David didn't call, not once, but Clara did. Yes, her, David's wife. The one with designer handbags and a smile like a razor blade, the one who never met a lie she didn't dress in pearls. She called the hospital once, 5 days after the accident. "Oh, good," she said when I answered. "So you're conscious. That's convenient." I blinked at the ceiling. "Convenient?" "For David, I mean. He had meetings planned this week. He was worried things might get complicated." "Complicated?" "I was hit by a truck, Clara." "Yes, of course, and we're all very sorry," she said, voice syrupy. "But you know how these things go, hospital bills, legal concerns, paperwork. And if, God forbid, you hadn't made it, well, David would have had to rearrange a lot of things." The line went quiet. Then, "Do you remember anything? From the night?" My heart stopped. She knew I'd heard. "Yes," I said slowly. "Bits and pieces." "Well," she snapped, losing her sugary tone, "let's just be grateful you're alive, shall we?" She hung up, and I stared at the phone in my hand, cold and shaking. Plans. That's what David had said. What kind of plans? What were they hoping for? The fear came crashing in, and underneath it, deeper, darker, a terrible knowing. I needed answers. because someone was counting on me not waking up, and I had to find out why before they tried again. You don't think clearly when you're healing. Everything hurts, even the thoughts. I remember staring at the white ceiling tiles in that hospital room, trying to piece things together through the fog of medication and betrayal. My son had made plans. Clara was rattled. That told me more than she meant it to. But it was the silence that spoke the loudest. David, who once called me every Sunday, hadn't spoken to me since the accident. Not a single call, not a single visit. Just that one clipped sentence to a doctor in the hallway. And I remembered the way he said it. Tell me if she doesn't make it. Not if she does. Not how is she. Not keep me posted if she doesn't. It was a clause, a calculation. David had always been precise, efficient. From the time he could stack Legos, he built his world carefully, never messy, never uncertain. When he was 7, he created a filing system for his baseball cards that would put the IRS to shame. When he was 28, he sold his first app for $2.7 million and married Clara 3 months later. I should have seen it then, the distance in his eyes, the way she looked at me, not like a mother-in-law, but like a speed bump. I made excuses. I said she was just ambitious. But ambition doesn't make someone wish you dead. Once I was discharged from the hospital, I didn't go home. Not yet. My house wasn't safe. At least it didn't feel safe anymore. So I went to the only place that did, Margaret's little blue bungalow, just 2 blocks over. She met me at the door with a robe, a clean bed, and a look in her eyes that said she wouldn't ask questions until I was ready. I sat on her back porch 2 days later, wrapped in a blanket, sipping tea while the wind moved through her gardenias. I heard him, I finally said. Margaret didn't ask who. She knew. I was in the trauma bay, barely conscious, but I remember his voice. My fingers clenched around the teacup. He said, "Tell me if she doesn't make it." Just like that. Margaret exhaled. Helen. And then Clara called, said it was convenient I survived, convenient, as if dying would have been neater. The wind shifted. We sat in silence. Then Margaret said something that changed everything. "Helen, do you have a will?" The cup stopped mid-air. "Because if you don't," she continued carefully, "someone might be preparing for you to disappear, legally, not just emotionally." That night, I dug through my bag, found the old leather folder I hadn't opened in years, the one David helped me set up after Frank died. Inside, a basic will, signed and notarized, dated 5 years ago. It left everything to David: house, investments, life insurance, no questions asked. I remembered sitting at the bank when he'd arranged it. "You don't need a lawyer, Mom. It's simple. I'll handle everything if something happens. That's what sons are for." He had smiled so sweetly then, and I had believed him. There was something else in the folder, a single sheet of paper, authorization to manage my accounts in case of incapacitation, power of attorney, signed by me, witnessed by Clara. The date? Just 7 months ago. I didn't remember signing it. Not clearly. A memory surfaced, David visiting one afternoon with Clara, saying I needed to sign a few updated health authorizations, just in case of emergencies. It had seemed harmless. Clara handed me the pen. David smiled. I was tired, distracted. I signed. And now I understood. If I hadn't made it through that surgery, they wouldn't have had to wait for a funeral. They would have walked into my house, my bank, my life, and claimed it all. Margaret connected me with her lawyer, Amelia, a kind-eyed woman who didn't flinch when I told her everything. She listened, nodded, and then leaned forward. "You need to revoke this immediately," she said, holding up the POA form. "And we need to look at your financials, all of them." She ordered copies of my banking records. I gave her my login info, my statements, everything. A week later, she called me. "Are you sitting down?" she asked. "I am now. There have been 4 wire transfers out of your primary account since the accident, all labeled authorized withdrawal, one for $9,000, another for $5,200, then $11,000, most recent one, $14,000, all signed off under the POA. I nearly dropped the phone. "Where did they go?" I whispered. "Clara Hayes," she said. "Every single one." My vision blurred with rage. "And that's not all," Amelia continued. "Your home insurance was canceled last week. So was your supplemental health plan." "Why would they—" "Because if something had happened to you," she said softly, "they wouldn't want to pay those premiums, not if the payout's already coming." I felt the floor tilt under me. Plans. This wasn't grief. This was strategy. The next day I started writing, not a journal, a ledger, just like I used to keep for Frank's business. Only this time, it was about me. Every document, every phone call, every memory. I logged Clara's call from the hospital, David's last visit, the signatures I didn't remember, the canceled policies, the bank withdrawals. I wrote it all in black ink, dated, time-stamped, underlined, because if there was a plan to bury me in silence, I was going to speak before they could, and I wasn't going to whisper. I called David that night. He didn't answer, but I left a message. "Hi, sweetheart," I said, my voice calm. "It's Mom. I hope your plans are going well. Just calling to let you know. I'm healing faster than they expected, clear-headed, walking, asking questions. Isn't that wonderful?" I paused. "Oh, and David? If anything else happens to me, don't wait for the hospital to call." I smiled into the silence. "I'll be the one contacting them." It started with flowers. A bouquet of white lilies, my least favorite, though Clara never could be bothered to remember that, arrived at Margaret's door with a glossy envelope tucked inside. No card, no name, just one typed line. "Wishing you a smooth and peaceful recovery." Peaceful, that word again. Margaret frowned as I read it aloud. "That's not a get-well card," she said. "That's a suggestion." I knew it, too. And 2 days later, a car I didn't recognize parked across the street. A silver sedan with dark windows. It stayed there most of the afternoon, engine running, watching. They were testing the water, seeing if the old woman in the hospital gown still had a bite. Amelia wasn't surprised. "You're rattling the cage," she said when I told her. "That's good, they're nervous, now we press." She handed me a folder, copies of the account activity Clara had initiated under the power of attorney, transfers, cancellations, even a drafted motion to place me in a long-term care facility for her own good. "I've seen this before," Amelia said, flipping through the pages. "It's called legal sidelining. You wait until the elder is vulnerable, then you prearrange guardianship, access their funds, isolate them with compassion, and make sure no one notices until it's too late." I looked at her. "Can we stop it?" "Oh, Helen," she said with a fierce little smile. "We're not just stopping it. We're going to walk it straight back to their doorstep." We started quietly. First, I filed the revocation of the power of attorney. Then we placed alerts on all my accounts, financial, medical, legal. No action could be taken without my personal approval. Then came the forensic accounting. Amelia had a young associate named Juno who dug into everything Clara had touched over the past year. She called me late one afternoon, breathless. "There's a trust," she said. "One David set up for you 3 years ago. You're listed as primary beneficiary. It holds $320,000. My stomach flipped. "I never knew about that." "You wouldn't. Clara's been managing the trust, and for the past 6 months she's been slowly liquidating it, claiming emergency medical costs and end-of-life planning. She even filed an invoice for prepaid cremation services. I nearly dropped my tea. They planned the whole thing, I whispered. They really thought I was done for. And when you didn't die, Juno said gently, you became a problem. But here's the thing about problems. I've spent my whole life solving them. I was the woman who raised a son while working 3 jobs, who sat up with a dying husband for 147 nights without complaint, who lived through the loss of friends, parents, youth, and kept going. You don't erase a woman like me with a signature and a hospital bed. You awaken her. So I decided to pay them a visit, not to Clara, to David. He worked out of a sleek glass building in downtown Dallas, tech startup, AI something or other. I showed up in a pressed blouse and lipstick, walking cane in hand, and told the receptionist sweetly, "Tell him his mother is here, alive and very much recovered." The poor girl looked like she'd seen a ghost. David came down 10 minutes later, eyes wide, mouth tight. "Mom," he said, "you look good." "I am good," I said brightly. "Shall we talk?" He led me into a small conference room, all steel and glass and modern discomfort. He wouldn't meet my eyes. "How's Clara?" I asked. He flinched. "She said you were both busy. I noticed you never called." David exhaled. "Things got complicated. You know how it is." I leaned forward. "Do I?" He looked away. I watched him for a long time. The little boy was still in there somewhere, buried under expensive shoes and justifications. "I heard you, David," I said quietly. "At the hospital." He froze. I let the silence stretch. "You said, 'Tell me if she doesn't make it.'" He paled. "I didn't mean—" "You meant it exactly how it sounded." "I was under stress. Clara said, she said things were bad, that you might not wake up." "And if I hadn't?" His silence was answer enough. I reached into my bag and slid the folder across the table. "What's this?" "Your wife's definition of peaceful." He opened it. His hands shook. Bank statements, wire transfers, the trust account, the fake invoices. "Mom, I didn't—" he began but stopped, swallowed hard. "You didn't know?" I said gently. "Or you didn't ask?" He stared down at the paperwork. His face crumpled, just slightly. "I trusted her," he whispered. I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. "She said you were confused," he said, "that the accident triggered memory issues, that you'd agreed to everything before. She lied. I see that now." I tapped the folder. "This is enough for a criminal complaint." His eyes widened. "I haven't filed it yet," I added, "because what I really want, David, is the truth. From you." He looked up slowly. "And I want one more thing." "What?" "To know why. Why you, my own son, stood at the edge of my life and waited for the dust to settle before checking if I was still breathing." He opened his mouth, then closed it. The silence that followed was long and terrible. Finally he whispered, "Because I was afraid." I nodded. "You should be." Then I stood, and I walked out. I didn't go straight back to Margaret's that day. I drove, slowly, carefully, to the little cemetery where Frank was buried. I stood at his grave with the wind in my hair and the storm in my chest. "Darling," I said softly, "you were right. He grew up with all your brilliance but none of your spine." I let the tears fall then, quiet, hot, clean. But I'm not done yet. Because the next move, that would be mine. And I knew exactly what I had to do. Have you ever looked at someone you love and realized they were standing on a cliff's edge, and you'd have to push them to make them see it? That's what it felt like the next time I saw Clara. She arrived at Margaret's house unannounced, just after sunset, in her pearl-white Lexus and her too-tight smile. Her heels clacked against the cobblestone like a warning bell. I heard her voice before I saw her. "Oh, Helen," she crooned, stepping through the garden gate like we were long-lost friends. "You gave us quite the scare." I didn't rise from my chair, just sipped my tea and looked at her over the rim. Clara always dressed like someone expecting a camera crew, blonde waves too perfect, diamonds a little too loud. But that night I saw the cracks. She looked afraid. Good. "Clara," I said coolly, "to what do I owe the honor?" She gave me that saccharine smile. "I thought we should talk, you and me, woman to woman." "Woman to thief, you mean?" The smile faltered for just a second. Then she smoothed it back into place and took the chair opposite me, uninvited. "I think there's been some confusion," she said. "We've all been under so much stress. David said you've been recovering well, but also agitated." There it was, that word, the one people use when they want to erase you. "Let me guess," I said. "You're here to smooth things over." Her lashes fluttered. "I just think it's better for everyone if we avoid unnecessary conflict." Conflict like robbing me blind under a forged signature. I leaned forward, voice steady. "You thought I'd die, Clara, and when I didn't, you panicked." Clara's voice sharpened. "You don't know what you're talking about." I opened the small folder on the table between us, slid a photo across the surface, a scanned bank record, her signature, her name, and mine, forged beside it. "You signed my name to open a trust disbursement account," I said. "Filed invoices for cremation planning before I even got out of surgery. Does that sound like confusion to you?" Clara didn't touch the photo. She sat very still. Then she laughed, but it came out brittle and wrong. "You really are something, aren't you? You act like some sweet little old woman, but underneath it, you're dangerous." "I know," I said softly. "That's why you're here." I'd already spoken to Amelia and the police. Financial exploitation of a vulnerable adult, they called it. A felony, prosecutable. The only reason I hadn't pressed charges yet was because I wanted to look Clara in the eye first. "You're not going to get away with it," I said. "Not the money, not the lies, not the power of attorney. It's over." Clara crossed her legs, that mask of hers slowly melting. "You think David's going to let you ruin his life?" she asked. "His career? His name?" "His name," I echoed. "Or your access to it." Clara went pale. For the first time in years, she couldn't speak. So I filled the silence. "I raised that boy," I said. "I held him through fevers, cheered him through heartbreak. I taught him what love looks like. But you—" I pointed to the signature, the trail of theft, the broken trust. "You taught him something else. You taught him that love is leverage." "I protected him," Clara spat. "You were a burden." "No," I said, standing. "I was a mother, and now I'm a witness." That night I packed my things from Margaret's and returned to my own home for the first time since the accident. The porch light flickered as I stepped onto the familiar wood. The house smelled like dust and old books, but it was mine, and I wasn't afraid anymore. I moved through each room slowly, flicking on lamps, opening windows. Light poured in. Air moved. I walked to the hall closet, opened the box I hadn't touched since Frank died. Inside, a set of documents, photographs, and a USB stick David had once given me, just in case. I had never used it. Now I did. It held more than I expected: tax forms, business agreements, password spreadsheets, personal notes between Clara and a financial consultant discussing potential pathways for managing family wealth after elder care transition. They were already planning my replacement. The next morning, I filed a formal report with the district attorney's office. Clara Hayes. Suspected financial fraud, elder exploitation, forged signatures, abuse of power of attorney. They told me they'd open a preliminary investigation. That was enough for now. Because now I had leverage, too. David called that afternoon. I didn't answer. He texted, "Please don't do this." He still didn't say sorry. He still didn't ask what I needed. So I didn't respond. Because this wasn't about his comfort anymore. It was about the truth. Amelia prepared the final packet: evidence, revocations, copies of trust documents, and a civil complaint ready to file if we needed to. I read it cover to cover. I initialed every page. I signed the last one with a steady hand, and then I picked up my phone. I called David. He answered on the second ring. "Mom?" His voice cracked. I didn't know how bad it was. I didn't see what she was doing. I thought you were—" "A burden?" I said softly. "An inconvenience? Someone who wouldn't fight back?" He was silent. "I'm giving you a choice," I said. "You tell her it's over. You give me access to the trust. You remove her from every legal connection to my estate, or I press charges." He whispered, "You'd really do that?" "I've already filed the report, but I haven't filed the lawsuit, not yet." Silence, then. "I understand." "No, David," I said. "You don't. But one day, maybe you will." That night, Clara moved out of their house. I knew because Margaret's friend from church saw the movers, and because David called again, not to argue, not to beg, but to ask one simple thing. "Can I come over tomorrow?" he asked. "I want to tell you everything." And I said yes, because justice may begin with fire, but forgiveness, that starts with a single step through the door. David came the next morning. He looked like a man unraveling, creased shirt, eyes hollow, hands trembling, as he held the tea I made him without asking. "I didn't come to defend her," he said quietly. "I came to confess." He told me everything. How Clara convinced him to sign forms he didn't read, how she handled my accounts, claimed I was confused, said I was forgetting things, how she planned to transfer the house quietly into their name by year's end. "She said you wouldn't notice, and if you did, you'd be too tired to fight." He stared into the steam of his tea. "I let her do it," he whispered, "because I wanted it to be easy. I didn't want to think about what would happen to you. I didn't want to face the fact that you're getting older, that one day you won't be here." My heart ached, but not for him, for the boy he used to be, the one who used to check the locks for me at night. "Fear isn't an excuse, David," I said gently. "You don't get to bury me because it's more convenient than loving me properly." He nodded, tears slipping down his face. "I know. I lost everything. She's gone. The money's half gone. And I almost lost you, too." I reached for his hand, not because I forgave him fully, but because I needed him to feel the cost of his silence. "You didn't lose me," I said softly. "You left me. And now, if you want to come back, you walk. One step at a time. You earn it." He nodded again, broken but listening, and for the first time I saw my son, not the man he became for the world, but the man he might still learn to be.